Disney almost made Toy Story 3 without Pixar's involvement. Thank God that never happened. Toy Story 3 turns 15 years old this week, so here are some things I bet you never knew about it. The story behind Toy Story 3 starts in 1988 with Tiny Toy, Pixar's third ever short film directed by John Lasseter about a living toy. In 1990, Disney approached Pixar about turning Tiny Toy into a feature, which eventually led to 1995's Toy Story. As the first ever fully computer animated feature film, Toy Story was a big hit, making nearly $400 million against a $30 million budget. They followed this up with Toy Story 2 in 1999, which made $511 million against a $90 million budget. And so Disney was very interested in keeping this gravy train going. And it didn't even need Pixar's help to do that. Because according to Pixar and Disney's initial contract, every movie up to and including Cars was owned by Disney. Disney owned the characters and the rights to make a sequel if it wanted to. Though they did have to offer the sequel to Pixar first, known as a right of first refusal. In 2004, Pixar and Disney's partnership started to fray, and it looked like the two companies might just split up. So CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, said, "Screw them, we'll make Toy Story 3 ourselves," at our newly established CG animation studio, Circle 7 Animation. Tim Allen even expressed interest in returning. And so Disney even set a release date for spring 2008. Eisner hired Bradley Raymond, who made The Hunchback of Notre Dame 2 and The Lion King 1.5, to direct Toy Story 3. And different script options were then developed. Teacher's Pet writers Bill and Sherry Steinkellner developed a story where Andy's toys visit Andy's grandmother's house and they start disappearing one by one in a whodunit style mystery. Then Meet the Parents screenwriter Jim Hertzfeld took a pass. In his version, Buzz starts to malfunction, so the other toys ship him back to the factory he came from in Taiwan. We then learn that Buzz Lightyears all over the world are malfunctioning and are going to be recalled and replaced with a new space ranger named Dax Blaster. So the toys ship themselves to Taiwan to rescue their Buzz. But then in 2005, Bob Iger replaced Michael Eisner as CEO of Disney. And rather than make an enemy of Pixar, he bought the studio, officially bringing it under the corporate umbrella. Iger then shut down Circle 7 and its version of Toy Story 3 with it. But Pixar decided to pick up the baton and develop its own trilogy capper. The Pixar Brain Trust, aka John Lasseter, Andrew Stanton, Pete Docter, and Lee Unkrich, had been harboring an idea for Toy Story 3 for years, and they intentionally didn't look at what Circle 7 had developed. As Unkrich explained in 2007, "We didn't look at any of the work they'd done. We really didn't want to know anything about it. Not out of spite, but we wanted to start fresh and not be influenced by what they'd done." So they took this old idea that they had, and the Brain Trust went off to the cabin where they first came up with the plot for the original Toy Story to hash out number 3. But immediately on the first day of this retreat, they realized their idea wouldn't be good enough. So they watched the first 2 movies again, and the next day, a new idea started to form. And this would become the movie we know today. Andrew Stanton then wrote the first treatment, and while John Lasseter had directed the first 2 Toy Story movies, he was busy making Cars 2 at the time. So in 2006, Pixar tapped Lee Unkrich, who had actually co-directed Toy Story 2, as well as Monsters, Inc. and Finding Nemo, to direct Toy Story 3. And Little Miss Sunshine director Michael Arndt was brought in to write the screenplay. As Pixar usually does on its movies, it drew out the entire film via storyboards first. These were then compiled together in rough animatics with temporary vocals, sound effects, and music. It took 2.5 years total to write and storyboard the film. But then when it came time to ask the old Toy Story actors to return for this third movie, rather than send them a script, Pixar sent them this basic version of the film. And after seeing that, the gang signed on. Tom Hanks was reportedly paid $15 million to reprise Woody, which is 300 times more than what he made on Toy Story 1, and the record salary for a voice performance at that time. Original Andy actor John Morris, who first played the character when he was 10 years old, came back at 25 years old to play this older version of Andy. No one at Pixar had spoken to Morris in years, and they weren't sure if his voice would work for this older version of the character. But when they called him and heard his voicemail, they knew it wouldn't be a problem. Toy Story 3 subtly reveals Andy's last name for the first time. It's Davis. Meanwhile, original Sid actor Eric Von Detten also reprised his role. Sid is the garbage truck driver at the beginning and end of the movie. Blake Clark replaced Jim Varney as Slinky after Varney died in 2000. And then we got the additions of Ned Beatty as Lotso, Michael Keaton as Ken, as well as Timothy Dalton, Kristen Schaal, and Jeff Garlin. Unkrich voiced the Jack-in-the-Box, while Whoopi Goldberg cameos as Stretch, and Richard Kind appeared as the Bookworm. Speaking of Lotso, there's a bear in the original Toy Story that looks a lot like him. As it turns out, John Lasseter wanted such a character in that 1995 film, but the Pixar animators had trouble getting the fur right with their primitive technology at the time. Also, the Western opening was an idea that they had originally had for Toy Story as well. And then Lego ended up releasing the train set seen in that sequence in real life. In preparation for the Sunnyside Escape, the Pixar staff watched a number of prison movies, and then it came time to start production. At the time, Toy Story 3 would go on to have one of the biggest movie budgets ever, but a little bit more on that later. So when they first started the animation process, Pixar tried to pull the old computer files that contained the Toy Story character 3D models. But unfortunately, when they tried tried to open them and edit these models, they were met with error messages, meaning they had to rebuild all of the toys from scratch. The new version of Woody had 229 animation points of movement in his face, while Buzz had 215. The production team spent more than a year and a half researching and developing the climactic and chaotic junkyard scene at the end of the film. And the trash bags were especially difficult and took weeks to get right because of how they crinkle and reflect light. But according to Pixar founder Ed Catmull, this was the first Pixar movie without any major meltdowns. There's an interesting connection between Toy Story 3 and Hayao Miyazaki. Daisuke Tsutsumi served as the Pixar movie's art director, and Tsutsumi is married to Miyazaki's niece, Mei Okuyama, who happened to be the inspiration for the character Mei in My Neighbor Totoro. And then Totoro makes a cameo in Toy Story 3. Tom Hanks and Tim Allen recorded their lines for the movie together, which is a rarity in animation, and there are 302 characters in the movie total, which was a record for Pixar at the time. Pixar also partnered with Dolby Labs on the movie's sound, and Toy Story 3 became the first movie ever to screen in 7.1 surround sound. Randy Newman returned as composer, making this his 6th Pixar movie. And did you know that Randy Newman was supposed to compose the score for 1997's Air Force One? He was fired from that film because his music was too whimsical, but some of the material he wrote for Air Force One ended up in Toy Story 3. At the end of the day, Disney invested $200 million into the making of Toy Story 3. Conventional wisdom states movies need to make twice their budget to break even, so the company needed Toy Story 3 to do as well as the others to make their money back. Which seems easy now, but remember it had been 11 years since the last movie. So Disney went all out with the marketing. It created a vintage commercial for Lotso that looked like it was recorded on VHS. There was a tie-in video game for all the major platforms at the time, and the Gypsy Kings performed a Spanish version of You've Got a Friend in Me on Dancing with the Stars. Toy Story 3 then opened on 4,028 screens in the US on June 18th, 2010, becoming the first Pixar movie to ever be released in IMAX. On its first day, it did $41 million domestic, which was a record for animation, and it would then go on to gross $110 million domestic opening weekend. At the time, that was a June record, a Pixar record, and a record for G-rated movies. It was also the second largest opening ever for an animated movie. The movie sold 52 million tickets in the US across its run, and it would go on to gross $1.06 billion total worldwide, which made it the highest grossing movie of 2010. $1 billion is 5 times its budget, meaning the movie turned at least $500 million in profit. Toy Story 3 was also the first animated movie ever to cross the $1 billion mark, which made it the highest grossing animated movie of all time. Frozen would later take its crown in 2014, and today Ne Zha 2 is the highest grossing cartoon, if you believe Chinese box office reports. If you don't, then the top movie is Inside Out 2. Toy Story 3 is now the 10th highest grossing animated movie ever. It went on to be the best-selling DVD of 2010, grossing an additional $186 million in its first 2 years on home video, and critics loved it. Today, 98% of the 309 reviews assessed by Rotten Tomatoes are positive. But it's the first Toy Story movie that didn't get 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences gave it an A cinema score in theater exit polls. Quentin Tarantino and Time magazine both called it the best movie of 2010, and in 2011, Time named it number 11 on the list of the 25 best animated movies ever. And in 2018, Indiewire called it the 10th best screenplay of the 21st century. Toy Story 3 was nominated for 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Sound Editing, Best Animated Feature, and Best Original Song for Randy Newman's We Belong Together. It won those last 2, beating How to Train Your Dragon in the Best Animated Feature category. Meanwhile, at the Annie Awards, it would lose to How to Train Your Dragon. Toy Story 3's Best Picture nomination at the Oscars is pretty significant because only 3 fully animated films have ever been nominated for Best Picture: Beauty and the Beast in 91, Up in 2009, and Toy Story 3 in 2010. In 2012, Iowa brothers Morgan and Mason McGrew set out to recreate the entire movie in stop motion. It took them 8 years, but in 2020, they released Toy Story 3 in real life on YouTube, and Disney even gave them special permission to put the film online. Today, it has more than 38 million views. The plot of Toy Story 3 successfully moved the toys away from Andy and to their new owner, Bonnie. There have been a number of TV specials, series, and short films featuring the toys in this new era. Disney and Pixar started developing Toy Story 4 as early as 2010. Josh Cooley directed the film with another $200 million budget. It came out in June 2019 and did $1.07 billion at the box office. Then in 2022, we got the spin-off movie Lightyear, which got mixed reviews and bombed at the box office, grossing just $226.4 million against a $200 million budget. Deadline reported in 2023 that Lightyear lost Disney $106 million. But in 2023, Disney announced that Toy Story 5 was in development. Tim Allen and Tom Hanks are returning, along with writer-director Andrew Stanton, and it has an anticipated release date of June 19th, 2026. And if you've made it to the end of this video, drop a "so long, partner" in the comments. Thanks for watching this video. Hit up my Substack if you want more news and deep dives.